Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, we are ready for the event.
Westwood One, this is Mission Control, Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
This is Westwood One. How do you hear me?
Westwood One, we have you loud and clear, and we're ready for your questions. Welcome on board the International Space Station.
This is Westwood One. How do you hear me?
Westwood One station has you loud and clear. We're ready for your questions.
Very good. International Space Station Commander Jeff Williams and Flight Engineer Kate Rubins of NASA are aboard the International Space Station, 250 miles above the Earth, and join us. Hello, and what part of the globe are you flying over right now, Commander?
Well, you caught me off guard here. We've been, of course, we orbit the Earth every 90 minutes, so we could be any side of the globe. I haven't looked for a little while, but in about 15 minutes, we're going to be heading over Africa, so I suspect that we're in crossing the Atlantic right now.
So right now, you are over the Atlantic, and about every 90 minutes or so, you circle the globe. What, how many miles per second is that?
Well, 5 miles per second, 17,500 miles an hour, 25,000 kilometers per hour, whatever units you want to use. Pretty fast.
Commander Williams, you've been in space numerous times. On this occasion, you're going to be outside the space station. Tell us about the spacewalk and what you and Flight Engineer Rubins will be doing.
Well, Kate and I are going to go out here in a little over 2 weeks, and the primary task is to install an international docking adapter, which is something new. It's a new addition to the space station to enable the docking of the upcoming, now being developed, commercial crew vehicles that will be used to rotate space station crews from U.S. soil.
Virgin Galactic was just granted a license from the FAA to bring tourists into space. Commander, would this docking station allow us folks to come aboard and join you soon?
Well, potentially whoever can get on one of those vehicles destined to the space station could come join us. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see who those folks are.
Flight Engineer Kate Rubins, how realistic or how many years away do you believe affordable space travel for the average citizen is going to be commonplace?
Yeah, I think if you look at the history of aviation, it took us a long time really to get to reliable commercial aviation. And so it's actually extremely exciting. I feel like we're in the middle of that process right now for spaceflight. And we're seeing the development of a lot of new vehicles. As Jeff said, we're going to start to launch from U.S. soil soon. So for us just to be on the ground floor and to be able to install something on the International Space Station that's going to help all these commercial vehicles is pretty exciting.
She has a degree in molecular biology and a PhD in cancer biology from Stanford University. Dr. Rubins, you've done a lot of research on HIV and infectious disease, and you helped the Army develop an Ebola therapy. A big issue across the U.S. and Central and Southern America right now concerns the Zika virus. I'm sure you are doing a lot of research in space on issues like osteoporosis, for instance, but let me ask you, are you researching the Zika virus cure?
Well, that's a good question, and we actually have a specific level of biosafety that we allow on board because we're in this closed environment. So we constantly recycle our air and our water. So we couldn't have something that's a dangerous pathogen on board. But what we can observe is what happens to common human pathogens. And so we do know that just the viruses that you carry in your body reactivate and become a little bit more virulent on board. That's going to help us learn a lot about basic virus immune system interaction and some fundamental understanding of what makes viruses tick and how humans can fight them better.
So in addition to your spacewalk and your duties as flight engineer, are you personally conducting experiments on this mission?
Actually, I don't even really feel the need to do that much personal research up here. It's so much fun to just be able to participate in about 100 different scientific experiments. There's a few things that I want to pull out on the weekend just to see how fluids move around and do a couple of videos to demonstrate some of the unique properties of microgravity back on Earth. right now I'm just having fun being the technician for all of these folks' research up here. We've got, like you said, a variety of heart cell and osteoblast research, and just too numerous to mention.
Commander Williams, the astronaut who currently holds the American record for most time spent in space, is astronaut Scott Kelly at 340 days, but that record about to be broken soon.
Yeah, I keep getting reminded of that. I like to I mean, it's been an honor to be to have throughout my career the opportunity to watch the space station grow, to work on it before the launch of the first element, and then to participate in the building of it in different phases, and now to see it in full utilization mode. So that's the really the tribute is to the international team and the partnership that made this magnificent orbital outpost in laboratory possible.
Not bad for a guy who graduated first in his class in U.S. Navy Test Pilot School in 1993. How does Test Pilot School differ from the Top Gun program we're also familiar with, Commander?
Well, the Test Pilot School, the Military Test Pilot School, trains you to evaluate aircraft based on their airworthiness and how the systems perform. So rather than just flying operationally, you know, you're spending a lot of time. You learn how to pay attention to the details and the flight characteristics to try to improve the handling qualities and the flying characteristics of aircraft. So it's more of an engineering job, but it's a great job and experience to have to prepare you for what we do here, because we're evaluating things and executing new procedures and using new equipment all the time up here.
Certainly. ISIS International Space Station Commander Jeff Williams and Flight Engineer Kate Rubins of NASA. How do we follow you each on Twitter?
So I'm trying to do a few posts to the @NASA Astronauts account, and that's actually a great account. You can follow all the NASA astronauts there, and you can also look at ISS Research or International Space Station accounts, and that'll update you about all the experiments, the exciting science, some of the EVA tasks we have up here.
And we'll be watching you both during the spacewalk. Good luck to you both.
Thank you very much. It was great to have you on board today.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the Westwood One portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from the San Diego Tribune.
Hello, International Space Station. This is the San Diego Union Tribune.
This is the International Space Station. We have you loud and clear, and we're ready for your questions.
Good morning, Commander Williams and Dr. Rubins. How are you this morning?
Great. It is great to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you. I'm going to, did I hear that you guys were moving over Africa roughly at this hour?
Yeah, we're actually going to be flying over Africa pretty shortly. We just went and checked the position on the globe.
Okay. I wanted to begin with some scientific research questions and then move on to your upcoming spacewalk. Dr. Rubins, you spent some time this week doing heart research. What were you focusing on?
Yeah, so this is actually a great capability for the space station. We're checking out the ability to grow heart cells, cardiomyocytes in the scientific terminology, and we're seeing if we can actually grow those in space. One of the reasons that we're doing that is while we're in space, we actually have an upward shift of our fluid. Without gravity, it doesn't drain your fluid down into your legs, and so this puts some unique stresses on your heart and the cardiovascular system. And we're hoping that by culturing some of these cardiomyocytes on board, we can actually learn more about how heart cells organize, how they beat on orbit, and their function and their molecular readout. These cells are going to be sent back down to the ground on the SpaceX 9 vehicle, and the scientists on the ground can analyze them.
Okay. Are you looking at your own heart while you're in space? I know you guys do a lot on physiology.
Yeah, we sure are, and this is one of the fascinating things about the space station is that it drives this kind of research in a remote environment. So we actually have a team of folks on the ground who've developed some really fantastic techniques for guiding us using ultrasound on board. So we're not ultrasound specialists. We learn a little bit in training, but we can actually use a remote guider and ultrasound our own hearts. We can look at the valves, we can look at the stroke volume, a whole bunch of different things from the ground. And this actually has a lot of use for the developing world, for remote medicine. Anytime you can't get the patient and the doctor together in the same room, you can use things like ultrasound and satellite networks to communicate medical information.
Were you looking at the heart cells through a microscope?
Yes, I sure was. That actually was a great day on board Space Station to put out a very nice microscope and get it out and look through the lens for the first time.
Okay. I was wondering whether the experience of looking through a microscope in microgravity is different than it is on Earth.
You know, I think folks were thinking about that a little bit because we had some discussions about how best to tack it down and if it was going to move around a lot. And actually, as soon as I put my eyes on the eyepieces, I felt like I was in a lab back on Earth doing my standard cell culture techniques. So the microscope actually works phenomenally well on board. It looks just like the cell culture that we see on the ground, but we can observe all these interesting phenomena that happen in microgravity.
Okay. I read that you were going to become the first astronaut to do DNA sequencing in space, at Space Station. Is that correct, and have you done it yet?
So we haven't done that yet, and I think there's a lot of talk about maybe being the first astronaut to do it, but really it's the first ground team to do it. These are the guys that have done all the hard work. There's a lot of folks at JSC, at NASA Ames, at one of the companies that we're working with that have put together all of the technology development to do this sequencer on board. And so it's a tech demo, it's a proof of principle. We're going to find out if this works in space. We're going to try to understand how we can do DNA sequencing and systems biology, modern molecular biology, while we're orbiting the Earth.
Okay. Is that an Illumina thing? It seems like everything that comes to DNA sequencing is Illumina.
Yeah, so the technology that's been developed for the space station is actually an Oxford nanopore. It needs to be small and portable and remote, and there's a lot of folks out there, I think, that are looking at a whole suite of different technologies. Anything that's a microfluidics chip would probably work really well up here.
Okay. You've had a great deal of experience studying viruses. Have you been doing any virus research on station?
So we actually have a great amount of microbiology research up here, which includes viruses and all bacterial organisms, yeast, fungi. We have some individual experiments that will look in canisters that the astronauts can activate and look at various processes that are going on in microbiological organisms. But we're also studying the station as a whole. So we're trying to understand the microbiological environment on Space Station, bacteria, viruses. We normally carry bacteria with us all the time, and we would expect that there's a lot of bacteria up here. It's not a sterile environment. It's a very nice and clean environment. Jeff and I try to keep it in ship shape, along with our crewmate Takuya Onishi and our Russian cosmonauts. But there is some interesting places to take a look at the microbiome of the space station. So that's all part of the research that folks have developed, and we're really looking at that plan as a whole to understand microbiology in microgravity.
Okay. A reader wanted to know whether your sleep has been disrupted by being in space. Some astronauts have had trouble periodically with sleep. How are you experiencing it?
So sleep is great up here. It's actually a really nice resting state. After you exercise, it takes less time for your muscles to recover. And so we look a little bit like zombies when we're sleeping, but I think it's quite restful up here.
Are you tethered to a wall in a particular part of Space Station?
Yeah, we have a really small little crew quarters that we can use, and it's just a perfect amount of space. We've got a sleeping bag on the wall, and you can climb into your sleeping bag and go right to sleep here.
Okay. This question is for the both of you. You and Commander Williams are scheduled to do a joint spacewalk on August 19th. In lay terms, what is the purpose of this spacewalk?
Well, we have a couple of tasks on the spacewalk, but the primary one is to install the first international docking adapter on the very front end of the space station to enable an interface, a docking interface for the future commercial crewed vehicles currently being developed by SpaceX and Boeing, those two companies, and hopefully flying here within the next 3 years to deliver crews to the International Space Station from U.S. soil.
Okay. Commander Williams, you have a great deal of experience doing spacewalks. What kind of advice have you been passing on to Dr. Rubins for what will be her first spacewalk?
Well, I'm very confident in Kate. She's going to do very well out there, but we are talking about the actual conditions of going outside and doing a spacewalk, moving large masses to include yourself, because the suit is several hundred pounds added to your body weight. That's a lot of mass to manage. The techniques for the workspace we'll be rehearsing. It's just like anything it's highly choreographed. We're going to be rehearsing the details over and over again up to the day of the spacewalk.
Okay. Last a couple of questions. Will the confines of your helmet make it difficult to see beyond what you're immediately doing, your immediate work?
Well, it depends upon where you're facing. If your head is full of space station and you're buried in a work site, then you don't see much other than that. But oftentimes when you're translating around the outside of the space station, or you get a free moment, you can turn around and look out into deep space or look at the entire globe of the Earth. And those are some really memorable moments that I'm sure both of us will have in this upcoming spacewalk.
Okay. Dr. Rubins, you have a lot of experience as a scuba diver. How different is the sensation of moving in microgravity from moving in water?
That's a great question, and actually one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot ever since I've been up here is how similar the space station is to our training in the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory at NASA. So we have what's essentially a very large swimming pool with a lot of the parts of space station structure underwater, and we spend hundreds of hours training underwater in the spacesuit. And so even things inside the cabin, like Jeff said, moving large masses, anytime you're trying to work with an object, you really see physics play out every day here. And so a lot of those lessons that we learned in our training really apply inside the space station as well, I think, on spacewalks. So there's a lot of similarities to scuba diving. There's even more similarities to our Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory training.
Okay. When you and I spoke last October, you said you would be able to see La Jolla from space station and that you hope to photograph it. Has that come to pass?
Yeah, so we got a great California pass when I first arrived here, and Jeff showed me all up and down, all the way from the Southern California border with Mexico. We could see up through Oregon and to Washington, and so I got a great series of photographs of California, but I've been looking on the map and trying to see when we're exactly over La Jolla. That might be quite a few months yet until we get a good pass, but I will make sure that I get some good photos for you.
Okay. What is the most interesting thing that you've seen through a lens of a camera up there? What is most captivating to you?
That is a really hard question. I think basically every time you look through the lens of the camera, there is something completely fascinating. It just takes your breath away every time.
Okay. I wanted to close by noting that your alma mater, UC San Diego, will have about 6,000 freshmen this fall. Do you have a message for young people like this about trying to find what it is that they want to do in life?
Yeah, I think actually young folks usually have a good sense of what they want to do. If you really ask them what drives you, what's your passion, what's your motivation, that's usually in there somewhere. And I think my message is to pay attention to that folks should find what really inspires them, that they should always pursue what they want to do. And if you're working hard and you're motivated about something, young people can accomplish a lot. I think the students at UC San Diego have their whole future in front of them, and I'm excited for them to get started in their freshman year.
Good. It's such a joy to talk to you. I really appreciate it, and good luck to both of you on your spacewalk.
Thank you very much. It was great talking to you today as well.
Thank you.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes the event.
Thank you, Westwood One and the San Diego Tribune. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.